A child and a pregnant woman are among the survivors of Friday's earthquake in Myanmar who have been rescued from the rubble as search and rescue efforts continue. The death toll so far stands at more than 2,000 people, but that number comes from the ruling military junta, which has a history of suppressing the scale of disasters. The quake was also felt in neighbouring Thailand, from where Nick Marsh sent us this report.
Prayers for the dead and for those still not found. Naypyidaw is around 170 miles from the epicentre of this earthquake, but it wasn't spared from its destruction. Our colleagues at the BBC Burmese service have managed to send back these images from Myanmar's capital. They say the smell makes it plain that there are still many bodies buried in the rubble. Few people in Myanmar are willing to speak to journalists for fear of reprisals from the military government, but this woman told the BBC that she and her family are still sleeping on the street.
There are aftershocks every 2 or 3 hours. We cannot expect to rebuild our lives under these circumstances. We may have to live in a slum. Nothing is left.
This is the epicentre, Myanmar's second city, Mandalay. International aid groups say that hospitals are overwhelmed. 800 miles away in Bangkok, another grim discovery. A woman who'd been working at this construction site when a partially built tower came down on Friday. She's the 12th person to be found. But dozens of workers remain unaccounted for here. The operation behind me is well into its 4th day, and the inevitable question now is, when does this stop becoming a search and rescue operation, and when does it become search and recovery? The authorities say not yet.
We are not going to stop even after 72 hours. We are going to speed up the process because we want to get to them even faster, because it's over the 72 hours golden period.
Trying to boost morale, Thailand's Prime Minister visited the site this morning. She's announced an inquiry into why this was the only construction in Bangkok to collapse. Investigators are analysing samples of the steel which was used to build the tower. It's put people here on edge. These workers rushed out of another construction site nearby after rumours of cracks being heard in the office block they were building. But it appears to have been a false alarm. Thai authorities are urging for calm. The city, they say, is safe. But given the devastation of the past few days, you can understand the concern. Nick Marsh, BBC News, Bangkok.
Those were daytime pictures from Bangkok. We can show you the scene there right now as those rescue efforts continue for the 74 construction workers who are trapped under this rubble of this collapsed high-rise building in Bangkok. As Nick was saying, there's been no sign of life in the wreckage for hours, but the city's deputy governor, who has been speaking, says they are committed to continue the search. It is a very worrying picture there in Bangkok, as indeed it is across Myanmar at the moment, particularly around the city of Mandalay. My colleague Steve Lai, who is also in Bangkok, has been speaking to Kani Wignanjara, the UN Assistant Secretary General and Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific at the UN Development Programme. And he began by asking about life in Myanmar even before the earthquake.
We've got to start with knowing that the population that has been impacted has been living near or below the subsistence line for about 4 or 5 years. So just think about 75% of the population already living in near relief type situations. So this central and northwestern region, the hit by this earthquake, it's not enough to get immediate relief. One has to, because that is life-saving. But simultaneously, you've got to look at how recovery can start right away, because this is just devastating. It's 2,000 plus death toll. But now we're getting reports from our teams on the ground that if you look at Sagaing town, about 80% of it is destroyed.
And what concerns you most now that we are 3 days from when that earthquake first struck?
You know, at this stage, I'm very grateful that the ASEAN countries and China, India, Turkey, Russia, UAE, they've all sent in relief supplies, and that adds to what the UN teams on the ground and international NGOs are helping with. But just think, with the two airports taken out, we just heard that the Naypyidaw airport now is up and running, at least some basic, some planes can land there. But this is a part of the country where we've got to be able to very quickly remove the debris, so access to the more rural parts that were very affected can also be gotten to. So you've got about 4 million people directly impacted in the urban cities and towns, and then you've got about 10 million people in rural areas that really need immediate help, and I'm talking food, water, and the hospitals that were badly damaged, but also electricity. There's power outages. And as I said, this is a population anyway. Maybe it was just 1/3 that had access to electricity and the internet. So it's a devastating situation. And in the midst of this, you cannot have a resumption of hostilities.
The UN Assistant Secretary General speaking to Steve there about the devastating picture across Myanmar.